Hi, I'm Lillian. Welcome back to my channel Ink and Pages. Today I'm going to be showing you my 2026 reading journal. After 10 years of using the Leuchtturm 1917 notebooks, I have switched things up to a Yop and Tom, which was in hindsight a bit of a risk because I was spending like 25 quid on a notebook I had never seen or touched in real life, but luckily I think it has paid off. The main reason I wanted to switch things up was because I wanted a notebook with thicker paper. So the Leuchtturm pages are 80 GSM and this one, and I mean a lot of the similar competitors are 160, so twice as thick. And the reason I went with Yop and Tom in the end was because it just had like less obnoxious branding. So a lot of the, well, some of the options out there were like ridiculously expensive or would have been ridiculously expensive once I factored in the delivery. And a lot of them had like really obnoxious branding, particularly on the spine, whereas this is like really subtle. It's a little thing there. I really like, well, I quite like this design. I left it quite late to order. I got this I think mid to late December. They have a lot of colors and a lot of different designs, and they were like 99% sold out. So I went with this one. I do like it, but I went with it because it was the least offensive of the options still in stock. In terms of the actual notebook, I mean, it's exactly the same as any other A5 dot grid notebook out there. I will say in comparison to the Leuchtturm ones of the same size, it has one more row per page, and it also has these little marks which show you the central column and the central row of a page, as well as this little, like, I think of it as a bullseye kind of target symbol on the center of a page to show you the exact middle. I won't lie, at first I really hated this. I hadn't noticed it in the photos I'd seen online before I ordered the notebook, and every time I turned a page it felt like the only thing my eye was drawn to, and I really didn't like it. It has grown on me. Well, it's not grown on me, I've become less bothered by it, and obviously once I've actually done some setting up in here and once you've used a page and written on it, it's less obvious. But I will now show you all of the setting up I've done and all of my 2026 reading spreads. So first off, in this notebook, we have a key page and then 3 pages of index, none of which I've used, and honestly, I don't think I will. The first thing I set up was this little rating system. This isn't super necessary because I know my rating system, I kind of created it and I use it all the time. But I just like how this looks. And this time I got to use a washi tape I've owned for years and years and years, and I think never used before. So I really like this page. Opposite, we have this bookshelf spread. This is very similar, if not identical, to previous reading journals. I have 10 books per shelf for a total of 40, and then every time I finish a book, I will colour in one of the spines here and write on the book title. In order to make it look cohesive, I'm going to be using the same pack of mild liners throughout the year. The colours aren't going to mean anything, I'm just going to alternate them as I go. I've been optimistic and left space for 40 books here. This is me being very optimistic because I think last year I read 22 or 23 books, but yeah, I'm feeling optimistic for 2026. Next is my reading log. This is honestly, in my opinion, the most vital part of a reading journal. I think this is the only spread you really need to put in a notebook and then start calling it a reading journal. I am going to keep it super simple, as I have all of my previous years, and just write down the number for each book, its title and author, and then the star rating I have given it. I've been optimistic again and left 2 double-page spreads for my reading log. Hopefully I will read enough books I actually spill over onto the second page. Next is this reading stats page. I tried something different, a bit bolder in the design here, and I think I like it. In previous journals, I have had 2 different spreads. So I've had one for past reading stats and then a different spread for the statistics for that specific year. And I wanted to like streamline them down and combine them a bit. So on the left here, we have 11 years worth of past reading stats and also my favorite book for each year. Well, it's technically not my favorite book from each year because I didn't want to have repeats on here. So I said no repeats, but rereads were allowed. And then on the right, I am only going to be tracking in this journal 4 stats for each month. So I'm going to be looking at how many books I finished, how many pages I read, and how many days per month I did any reading, as well as any difference to my TBR. So whether I've been buying more books than I've been reading or vice versa. This favorite book of the month spread I feel is pretty self-explanatory. I'm just going to be putting the book cover of each of my favorite reads for each month, and then my anticipated releases I don't really use this that much. I'm not really on new releases. It's not something I pay very much attention to at all, but I just really like this spread and I really like how it looks, so I like to include it in my reading journals anyway. This spread is a new one for this year. These are all of the books on my own TBR. A couple of these are ebooks, but the vast majority are physical books I own on my shelves that I have not read. I went for a pretty simple layout because I knew it would take ages to write out all these titles, but I wanted to do this because I'd like to make more of an effort to read things this year that I have owned for ages. So last year I finally read the book Arcadia by Ian Pearce, which had been on my TBR for 10 years and I liked it. And so I want to have more experiences like that and actually get through. I mean, some of these books like I've owned for 13 years and have barely touched. So I'm thinking that once I finish a book on this list, I'm just gonna cross it out or highlight it in the same color I've used. Next is my series tracker. So these are all the series I am in the middle of reading. I could have probably condensed this down to just fit on one page, but I'm used to having it spread over two. And even though I think this layout maybe looks a little bit spread out across 2 pages, I also think it makes it look less intimidating. So I've put one box for each book in the series and I've coloured in the ones I've already read, and then as I read more throughout this year, I'll colour them in a different colour, possibly a green to match the washi tape. Next is my book bingo. This is a staple of my reading journals past, but I've changed the layout slightly here because I could never find a way to have the bingo look nice while also having a good way to note down which books had filled which prompts. So I've changed it slightly this year. I've gone for this sort of grid reference kind of a thing. So for example, if I read a book that is set in space, I will colour in the square and then that will be B3 and I'll write down the name of the book here. And for another example, if I finish a series, I'll colour in this square and this one will be O5. An opposite is a spread I've never done before, and my DNF graveyard. I saw similar designs to this on social media and thought they looked cool and I wanted to include it this year. I don't abandon or DNF many books, so I thought 9 gravestones would be more than enough for me. Next is my Reading Around the World page. This layout I think is identical to last year's and the year before and the year before, and I'm just aiming to read a book from each of the 6 continents. Sorry, Antarctica. Next are these 2 pages, which are really fun to fill out each year, even though I don't think I've ever fully completed them. First, we have Read the Rainbow, obviously to do with the colours of book covers. I will just stick in a picture when I read a book of each colour. And the Alphabet Challenge is to do with book titles, and I will just write them in and then colour in the corresponding letter. Next is my Buzzwordathon spread. This is a reading challenge created by Kayla on the channel Books and Lala, where there are prompts for 12 different elements in book titles. There's also now a challenge for elements on book covers, which in hindsight, I kind of wish I had included another spread very similar to this, but maybe in a different color. But this one with the book titles is the original idea, and I love how the spread looks. Next is this swimming challenge, which is only very tenuously reading related. So I really like swimming, and one of my goals this year is to swim the equivalent of the width of the English Channel, which is 34 kilometers at its narrowest point. And years ago in a bullet journal, I did a swimming tracker a bit like this. So I wanted to do another one, but also make it kind of book related, so I had an excuse to include it here. So I've added these 4 spaces for if I read any books this year which have water on the cover or in the title, or they're set near water or are to do with water or swimming in any way. On this squiggly path that I've drawn, each square represents 50 meters or 2 lengths in a swimming pool. And then once I reach this point, I will have swum 34 kilometers in the year. The second to last spread is for any new books I buy this year, not just ones which are unread and are going to go on my TBR shelf, but also if I happen to buy any books which I've already read before and just want my own copy of. And finally is this first line spread. This was a page I did in my 2024 reading journal, left out last year and then kind of missed, so I'm adding it back in again. And it does what it says on the tin. I'm just going to write down the first line of each book I read. So that is my reading journal for this year. I've already finished a couple, I think 3 books so far, so I'm excited to go into this and actually start using the spreads as I have planned. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll see you in my next one.